Hello, hello. How is everyone doing this evening? Glad to see you folks here. Let me know in the chat. All right, we got Daniel from Portland. Oh, Daniel. Hey, Daniel. And we got Ann. Hey, Ann. Good to see you guys here. Ross from the UK. Oh, my goodness, Ross. 2 a.m? I was feeling tired. I thought it was crazy that I was doing this at 9 p.m. Eastern, let alone 2 a.m. You're a trooper, man. Let me know if I'm coming through all right for you folks. Let me know if you can see and hear me okay in the chat. Welcome, John. Welcome, Len. Welcome, Martina. Hey, Martina, good to see you. Welcome, Tom. Wet and drizzly. I see you. I hear you too. Great. Good to hear you, Dan. Good to hear I'm coming through okay. Folks, go ahead and say hello in the chat. Let us know where you are, where you're from in the world, and we'll get started momentarily. Daniel, that is not a 6-string bass. It is a guitar hand built by a friend of mine and gifted to me just the other day. So he ordered all the parts from scratch, wired it himself, put it together himself, sanded it, stained it, did everything, and gave it to me. So I've been playing the same guitar for 30 years. That's the red one I normally have back there. But this time, the new gifted guitar is showing up back there. Hey, John from Indiana. Good to have you here. Yeah, it's amazing. You can't really see it, I don't think, but it's got a F hole. It's like a kind of hollow body. And so even when it's not plugged in, you can play it. Amazing. Very cool stuff. Hey, Len. Good to see you. Who else we got? More people join in. Tom. Great to see you, Tom. All right. Let's get going. All right, welcome everyone to Secrets to a Fun and Focused First Draft. I'm so glad you guys are here. Even Ross, it's 2 a.m. for him, and he is here. Now that's dedication. But all of you, great dedication. People love to sign up for webinars and then not show up. So great to see all of you here live. We're going to have fun. We're going to have a good, fun time here. We're going to look at the secrets to writing a fun and focused first draft of your book. And by the end of this presentation, you're going to have a clear path forward for the successful writing of the first draft of your next book. You're going to be kilometers ahead of 90% of the other writers out there. I am in Ottawa, Canada. I just had to say kilometers instead of miles on that slide. So for those of you, I think most of you know me, but for those of you who are perhaps watching this in replay or meeting me for the first time, my name's Kevin Johns. I'm a writing coach for a decade now. I've been helping writers get ideas out of their heads and onto the page. I'm an author myself. I have a writing instructional book called Smash Fear and Write Like a Pro, which is about the mindset side of being an author, which is something we're going to talk about today for sure. I have a book called The Novel Writer's Blueprint. I have a young adult horror novel called The Page Turners and its sequel, The Page Turners Economy of Fear. I have a free book that I give away on my website called Novel Advice. If anyone's watching this and they don't have a copy of that book yet, let me know. I'll give you a copy for free. I've also written a dark thriller called M School. So that's one end of the spectrum in which I write dark, scary, violent stuff. And on the other end, I have a book called Rocket Princess versus Snaggletooth the Dragon, a children's picture book. So I've written and coached in every genre you can imagine, especially since I've worked as a ghostwriter. As a ghostwriter, I wrote a ton of nonfiction, largely in the leadership and small business advice space. I have a podcast called The Writing Coach. We've got 175 episodes of that show now. I've been doing that for almost a decade as well. I host panels at book conventions and writing workshops and these sorts of things. And of course, I am a writing coach, which reminds me, I meant to wear my hard hat on the call. This was again gifted to me by one of my clients. It's my writing coach hard hat, so we can get to work here and do some hard work. But that's enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about you folks. Let's ask, is this training for you? You've never written a book before and are now ready to give it a shot. You've attempted to write a book before but failed to complete it. You're actively working on a book. Oh, you've been actively working on a book. Who wrote these slides? For years, but can't seem to finish it. You've been you've written a book before, and you're now looking for a quicker and more productive way to write a high quality first draft. All right, let me know which of those describes you. I think I have a poll that's about to go live. Click on that poll and let me know which of those descriptors best describes you. The poll is in the chat. Okay, written a book before, looking for a more productive way to go about it. Never written a book before. Great. We have both ends of the spectrum here. I'm watching that poll, waiting to see those numbers turn. Anyone else ever spent 7 years maybe writing a book? Anyone been there? All right. Well, if you've ever tried to write a book, but in some way struggled to finish a first draft, I know how you feel. You and I probably have a lot more in common than you might think. So, Wayne's World, flashback time. Flashback to young Kevin. I finished grad school. I studied English literature. I got my master's degree in English literature, and I did what everyone in my program did. We all studied English literature. We graduated, and of course, we all started to write our first novels. That's what you do, right? You study literature, and then you go out and you do it, and you write your first book. However, 7 years later, I was still writing that same book. I had no idea what I was doing, and it felt like for every step forwards, it was 2 steps back. And I said to myself, there has to be a better way. There's all these writers out there writing a book a year. Here am I am pounding away for 7 years. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong. So I became obsessed with productivity. I deconstructed my workflow. I eliminated everything that was slowing me down. And then I sequenced the remaining steps to produce maximum results. So I took this vast project that is writing a book, and I turned it into an organized system that propelled me past the roadblocks that had been holding me up and so many other writers as well. So I applied what I learned. I finished that book, and that was The Page Turners, that book we were looking at in the opening slides there. I launched my author career, and of course, that eventually led to my career as a writing coach. So on today's webinar, I'm going to share with you the techniques that allowed me to finally finish that first book, write and publish a dozen more, and help hundreds of authors do the same. Now, before we get into it, I do want to lay out my 6-stage book production process. This is the 6 phases that I think of in terms of creating a book all the way through to finishing it. So stage 1, story planning. Some of you right now, let me see, Martina's here, I know, Anne is here, Daniel's here. These are all folks who are in story plan right now. You're in phase 1, right? Plan that story, do the genre research, pick the story structure, develop the characters, figure out the causality, the themes, all of these things that we've been doing for the last month. That's just phase 1. We've been doing a ton of work in story plan, and that's only phase 1. Phase 2 or stage 2 is you've got to write that first draft of the book. Then we enter revisions. I break revisions up into a 3-phased process. Phase 1 of revisions is story discovery revisions. We're looking at the picture, at the book at a macro level, big picture, moving around scenes, thinking about things in terms of sequences and at the act level. Stage 4, amplification revisions. We're drilling down to the scene level now. We're going scene by scene in the book, and we're saying, is this scene firing on all cylinders? Is this scene as good as it can be? For anyone who's been listening to my podcast, recently I spent 4 episodes, I think, going over a tool that I give away called the Scene Essentials Alchemy Checkmate List. And that tool is basically for the amplification phase. You've got a scene, it's written, you know it's going to be in the book. You're like, this is Act 2, Scene 7. We've done the big picture stuff. That scene ain't changing, but is that scene as good as it can be? And with that alchemy tool, you can ask over 20 questions of that scene to make sure that you're able to amplify it and make it as good as it can be. Then we enter the polish phase. So this is when we're looking at line by line. We're crossing T's, we're dotting I's, we're fixing typos, we're fact checking, and we're making sure that our writing is beautiful and that it's elegant. So as you can see in this 3-phased revisions process, we started at the big macro level, we went to the scene level, and now finally we're down to the polish phase. And the reason I break it up like this is because so many people get overwhelmed in the revisions process because they're trying to do all of this at once. They're trying to amplify the emotions and write beautiful sentences and make sure the book's working at the macro level. It's too much to attack at once. It's overwhelming, and it's barely like your brain can barely handle it all. But you'll notice the reason we did that reverse pyramid or that funnel is so that you're not spending days, hours, weeks, months, years polishing up a scene that's ultimately going to be removed and deleted for macro level story reasons. So start at the big picture. Don't waste your time polishing line by line by line at the same time that you're trying to do all these other things, right? We're trying to be strategic in our approach to creating our book, both in terms of time and energy. We don't want to waste time and energy. That's how you end up spending a decade writing a book. And then finally, we reach stage 6, which is choosing the path to publication. We live in an amazing time. There's a zillion ways to get a book published these days. Even 20 years ago, you basically had traditional publishing. You had to get a literary agent. They needed to sell the book. You got a contract with a big publisher and you got the book out. Or you went with what they called a vanity press those days, which was you'd have to run a print run of your book. And most printers wouldn't do anything less than, say, 1,000 copies of a book. And so you'd have to pay to have 1,000 copies of your book printed. And then you'd need to also store those books. Most people had them in their garage, their basement, thousands of books that they had trouble selling. It was so difficult to get books out in the world. These days, we have independent publishing, self-publishing straight to Amazon. We have Kindle, we have small presses, we have medium-sized presses, we have hybrid presses. And while those traditional publishers have conglomerated and basically become like, they call them the big 5, but I think one of them absorbed another one. So there's basically these 4 big giant corporations in the traditional publishing world now. That said, because they've swallowed up all these smaller publishers, they have all these like subsidiary publishing units that, you know, might be right for your book. So the point being, there's tons of ways to get your book out into the world. Getting the book published is really just a choice that you need to make about what is best for you. It's all these stages before this that are the hard stuff. And in my opinion, and having worked with hundreds of authors and having, you know, lurked in dozens at least of writer Facebook groups, what I've seen is that where people really struggle is in completing that first draft of their book. Something that's interesting about National Novel Writing Month, they release statistics, and the completion rate of National Novel Writing Month is like pretty low. Like I think it's below 20% of people actually get 50,000 words written during that month. Why? Well, because writing 50,000 words in 1 month's time is hard, but writing a first draft in general is really difficult. So let me know in the chat, what's your thoughts on why is it so difficult? What makes writing the first draft of a book so hard? For those of you who have started or finished books, what did you find hard about the first draft? What sort of challenges did you run into? You guys still with me? We got a quiet group tonight. That's a quiet chat. Go ahead and type in. Let me know what sort of struggles you run into. Time. Okay, definitely. Yeah. Getting the first two chapters done and getting into the story. Yes. We're going to talk about that. You know, that might sound really specific, Anne, but it's not really. That's a super common thing. Motivation, James. Yeah, for sure. Where to start? Yeah, you've been working on this since 2008, Tom. Exactly. Those first drafts are tough. Finding out where the story and especially the characters were taking the stories. A panther, yeah, going to a panther going to plantser. Nice. Self-esteem, Martina, for sure. Ross says, for me, it's about getting lost in the weeds. Yep, and missing that macro level. I'd fall in love with a part of the book and polish and polish and polish. There's also that fear of judgment. Yeah, first draft for Tom too. All right. I think a lot, if not all, of what you no worries about type of Martina. Half of you are probably attending this on a tiny little phone, right? So no worries at all. And everything you folks have said, I think we are going to address almost all of it, if not all of it, on today's presentation. So here's my take. It's that those of you who have been in Story Plan, you know that you've been working on this incredible outline. Some of you are pantsers, and that's your own challenge going into first drafts. But even people with an outline face emotional challenges, right? That came up. Energy issues, loss of enthusiasm, shortages of time, lack of productivity. Tom working on it for so long, not making process. Daniel talking about lack of time. Martina talking about low confidence. Any of these things can throw the writing of a first draft of a book way off course. And in addition, there's undoubtedly micro level writer's craft details, techniques, and formulas that you're not yet using in your scene to scene writing. So today, we're going to cover the secrets to overcoming the three biggest problems standing in the way of you successfully completing a fun and focused first draft of your book. But first, let's establish some house rules, okay? Most of you know I'm a literature teacher. I teach writing, I coach writers. I am not a marketing expert, okay? So there's not going to be any promises on today's presentation about making sales, about how to sell books. That's not what I teach, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about writing. We're talking about the craft of writing. And it will require some hard work, right? We got our hard hats on. I'm not going to come in here and say, here's the 3 ways to write an entire novel in a weekend with your eyes closed while also surfing, right? That's, the reality is it does take some hard work to write a book, and it does take a time commitment. No matter how fast you write, there's still a mathematical equation that says, even if you write 3,000 words an hour, it's still going to take you, 1,000 hours to write a 30,000 word book? Is that right? Or 100 hours? It takes a long time to write a book, even if you're super fast. Okay. So let's establish some house rules. We're talking about real life stuff here. We're talking about real writers who have lives, who have jobs, who have families, and who are balancing the creation of their novel with everything else going on in their lives. So let's talk about program number 1. I'm going to group a lot of the questions that or a lot of the challenges that you folks have mentioned into 3 big challenges here. And one of them is distractions. This is that issue that life gets in the way. It always happens. Every single year, going back to National Novel Writing Month, every single November, hundreds of writers start to write a book for NaNoWriMo. And then guess what? they're shocked when Thanksgiving happens. Yes, Thanksgiving is in the middle of National Novel Writing Month every year, but people don't think ahead. People don't plan for it. Suddenly, writing every day for a month in November is a lot more harder when you're traveling, when family's visiting, when you have a turkey to make, right? And those are the good things. So many other things happen in life that catch us off guard, right? Illness, we lose a job, the car breaks down. There's so many things that can happen in life that can send us off course and can distract us from our creative goals. There's also that lack of time that Daniel mentioned. I think we are probably the busiest generation of people there's ever been. There was a lot of human history that involved sitting and looking and thinking and walking through nature. And nowadays, with smartphones and with social media and with internet and this and that, we've got 1,000 things coming at us at every time. And in addition, the economy's tight. People have to work, right? It's not like that we're in this bountiful time where people are handing out houses. Times are tight. People are working very hard. And so finding the time to dedicate to doing something like writing a book is not easy. Now, this is another one. I call this squirrel syndrome. And tell me, any of you, if you've dealt with this, where you're like, this book is really good. This is going to be my novel. And then like 18,000 words in, you're like, what's that? What's that over there? Oh, there's this other book. Oh, I've got this other idea. Oh, I think I like that one better. In fact, I don't think this was the right book for me at all. And you jump into that project. And guess what? 10,000 words into that project, you jump into another project. You're like a squirrel going from tree to tree, right? Every little while, you've got new distractions. You've got a new project that you want to tackle. That is squirrel syndrome. That is distractions. And no accountability. So I interviewed this author, Jenny Nash, once, and she said something to me that I remember to this day. I thought it was so profound. She went with a traditional publisher, and I said, Jenny, because I'm a very independent guy. I like indie publishing. I like running my own business. I like being my own boss. I don't like answering to anyone. So traditional is not for me. But I was curious, so I said to her, Jenny, what were the benefits of going with traditional publishing? And she said the number one benefit of going with a traditional publisher is contractually obligated deadlines, right? She signed a legal contract that said, I will finish my manuscript and deliver it to you by this date, or I won't get paid. That's so great because it's creating that accountability. She was saying that was the best thing about having a publisher. But so many writers, including first-time authors or indie authors, they don't have that contract hanging over them. They don't have that accountability. They don't have an editor or anyone saying, get that book done, or you're in breach of contract, or you're not getting paid. And it's really tough to prioritize art when no one's holding you accountable. Then there's the revisions maelstrom. So this was, I forget who was saying they were going line by line polishing. Ross. So Ross, this is the revisions maelstrom. You write scene 1, you write scene 2, you write scene 3, and you're like, you know what? I think scene 2 can do some work. And you go back and you're working on scene 2, and then you're like, you know what? Scene 1's not that great either. I better fix that up as well. And then I get ahead and I might as well revise scene 3 at this point, right? And then you write scene 4, but then something happens in scene 4 that makes you circle back around again. And basically, you're in this whirlpool, like this image that we're looking at here. You're never continuing to the end because you're constantly cycling back for revisions. You do not want to get caught in that revisions maelstrom while writing the first draft of your book. Even when the first draft is done, we already talked about it, a phased approach, a very strategic phased approach, not a whirlpool that you can't escape from. So what are the solutions here? What are the solutions to distracted focus? Well, proper project management for one. Writing a novel is a big project, and we need to treat it as such. Some of you in your day jobs are probably project managers, right? And how does that work? You probably write a business case or do some sort of research or a proposal, then you implement the project, you start delivering the service or running the program. Then what do? You monitor how you're doing so that you can see whether it's actually working or not. And then you make adjustments based on your key performance indicators and the results that you're seeing and the analysis that you're doing. So many writers sit down and just start writing and say, "Oh, I hope it's done by Christmas." And that's if they say that at all. They might not even have a deadline, let alone a critical path with important milestones along the way or key performance indicators such as number of words written per day. I have so many writers that I work with who will say something like, "I think I'll revise one scene a week," and their book has, say, 52 scenes. And they'll say to me, "When do you think I'm going to get this done by?" And I'll say, 1 year from now. They'll say, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you're doing one scene a week. You have 52 scenes. There's 52 scenes in a year. That's how long it's going to take." And they go, "Well, I don't want to take that long." And so we say, "Okay, well, guess what? Revise 2 scenes a week, and now you're done in 6 months instead of 12 months." There's some math that we can do here so that we can establish reasonable goals for ourselves. So often people set goals in their writing that are based on nothing. They're not based on any existing indicators. They don't say you spend a week writing at home and then you spend a week writing in a coffee shop. And if you actually measure your, say, word count or your number of scenes revised or whatever and compare, you might be able to discover that you write way better in a coffee shop than you do at home. But again, all of that is project management. It's saying this is a big deal. It's an important thing with a lot of moving parts. So I'm going to manage it, and I'm going to manage my expectations, and I'm going to make changes to how I'm approaching things based on evidence in terms of how quickly I'm progressing towards my goals. Community can also become so important here when we're talking about things like accountability, when we're talking about things like squirrel syndrome or the revisions maelstrom. Having a group of writers who are going through the same thing with you and who are saying, "Push forward, keep going, I know it's hard," is so helpful. For all the folks who are in Story Plan group coaching right now, we were talking about this on the call this week, right? It's like, this is hard stuff, but being able to hop on a coaching call with other writers or being in a Facebook group or being in a critique group in your community or whatever it is, that interaction with other people going through the same thing can be really helpful for keeping you focused, keeping the eye on the ball, and making that progress that you want to make on your book. Let's look at the second big problem that I see now. It's the micro level skill set gap. Here's the thing, you don't know what you don't know. And most of us are never taught how to write a book. Why did it take me 7 years to write that first book? Because I didn't know what I was doing. I had a master's degree in studying English literature. I knew how to read a book and analyze it. I knew how to talk intelligently about the themes, or I could tell you where Shakespeare was when he wrote Hamlet or whatever, right? But they never told me anything about how to write a scene or a character arc or how to create tension or how to avoid info dumps. None of these things are frequently taught in the public space. And so if you don't even know what tools are out there, what techniques are out there, you're not going to be able to execute to the best of your ability. And writing is hard. One of the greatest writers of all time, Ernest Hemingway, said, "We are all apprentices in a craft where no one ever becomes a master." So that's Hemingway saying, "I'm not a master yet. I'm always learning." So we need to continually build out our skill set so that we can write to the best of our abilities. And while there's lots of places out there to learn macro level stuff, it's a lot harder to learn the scene by scene, micro level, nitty gritty things. Everyone, for the most part, knows about 3-act structure. People know about the hero's journey, right? These things are out there. People do webinars on them, there's videos on them, whatever. People talk about it in general life. People don't talk about the mechanics of actually writing literature. So, what's the solution? What do we do about that? Well, we seek out training resources. One of the things that I did when I was getting so frustrated with my book was I went to the library. This was, a long time ago, I didn't know writing coaches existed. Online courses were like in their infancy. A lot of the tools that are so easily available today, I had no idea even existed, let alone had access to. So I went to my local library and I took out every book I could find on writing a book. And then I discovered Writer's Digest and I ordered a bunch of books from Writer's Digest, these craft books. I took the time to really spend focusing on reading the material that I didn't get in my education and that I didn't hear people talking about in regular life. And like I said, I also didn't know there were experts out there. I wish I had known someone like a writing coach exists or a developmental editor. I had a general idea that there was editors out there, but I really didn't understand how the gap between an expert and where I was. I thought I was here. I was here. And if I'd done that outreach earlier, I would have got done much quicker and realized what I didn't know. And so look for opportunities to work with experts and to get feedback on your writing from people who've been there and who have done it and who have gone through the same process you have, and ideally have some experience in providing feedback in a way that's supportive and positive. And just adapt that Hemingway mindset. There's always going to be skills to learn and new techniques. I'm certainly constantly learning. I teach writing. I'm also constantly taking writing courses and reading writing books, because every teacher comes at things a different way. And sometimes someone will phrase something in a way that I haven't heard phrased before. And I go, oh yeah, that's a great way to say that, or that's a great way to think about that. And the other thing I find is when we're studying, when we're going through craft training, even if we know the material, it's great to revisit it, but it also just stimulates ideas. Like I've never sat through a writing workshop and not had an idea for whatever book I was working on at that moment. And so just continuing to seek out training resources and continuing to educate yourself and just say, hey, I'm like Hemingway. I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life because I love this art form and it's a complicated one. Next up, let's talk about that emotional roller coaster ride. Too many writers start out strong and then they hit a wall and they lose interest in the project or they lose enthusiasm for their story, and they start to second guess their manuscript, their approach to the manuscript, even their skills as an author. I'm sure all of us at some point have said, do I even know what I'm doing? Right? Like, is this any good at all? These are the thoughts that come up. Stephen Pressfield wrote a book called The War of Art, and he named these thoughts. He named them resistance. He coined the term resistance, which is that thing preventing us from doing the creative work we know we want and need to do. But something's in there saying, this isn't that good. You're not good enough. You can't do this. And I think a really big part of this emotional roller coaster ride is the S curve, or the transition curve, which is where we start a new project with uninformed optimism. We don't know how hard it's going to be, so we're super stoked about it. But before long, we realize it's really hard to write a book, and maybe we don't know as much as we thought we know. And we get this informed pessimism. Oh, this is going to be really hard. And what happens next is you head down into the valley of despair, or the valley of despise, as I wrote it here. And what happens there is you have two options. You crash and you burn, you give up, you say, I'm never going to be a writer, or you say, this manuscript, it isn't good enough. You trunk it, you say, I'm done, or you push through. And these push through moments are like runners in a marathon. If you've ever spoken to a runner, they'll tell you about this thing called the wall, where when you run long enough, your body starts telling you you're done. You can't run any further. But that's actually a biological mechanism of your body protecting you. And how it's designed is to tell you to stop way before you actually need to. People run ultra marathons, right? Because they learn to push through that wall, and they learn that they have a reserve that they didn't know about, that they are capable of achieving things they've never taught because they gave up at the wall. And so if you push through that wall, if when things get hard, you don't give up, that when you're feeling down, you don't give into the despair, but you push through, you reach this phase of informed optimism, which is where you say, hey, this is hard, but I can do it. I've still got it in me, and I believe in myself, and I believe in this project. And that's how you find success and fulfillment. You push through that wall. So, what's the solution to this whole emotional roller coaster ride of writing a book? You got to get ongoing emotional support. People love to think of writing as this solitary exercise where you go off into the cabin and you sit alone, you write your masterpiece, and you come back to civilization and sell it for $1 million. That ain't how life works. People need support along the way. And even though when you sit down at a movie, and there's 10 minutes of credits at the end, every single person, the guy who took out the garbage and the person who ran craft services, get their names in the credits. For some reason, that's not how books work. We get the name of the author on the front, and that's about it. It gives this impression that this is a solitary endeavor, but it's not. Any book you've ever read had editors, had proofreaders, had typesetters, had cover designers, had developmental editors, and all sorts of people, beta readers, right? Provide feedback and support the author. And part of that support process for a lot of us is emotional support along the way. Something else I don't think writers understand how much they need it, and in fact they mistake it for a different need, is positivity. So many writers give people their manuscripts, their works in progress, they go to critique groups, and they think what they need is a critique. They want someone to say what's working and what isn't. But most of the time when that's happening, subconsciously, deep down, or if you were being honest with yourself, what you really are looking for is positive feedback. You want someone to say, I acknowledge the hard work, the heart and soul you've put into this, and it's good and it's worth keeping going. That's what most writers need to hear, particularly during a first draft. And unfortunately, we have this culture of critique, and people hand out half written scenes, and then people tell them it's crap and they're heartbroken by it. Seek out positive feedback to support you emotionally while you're going through what is already a challenging process, writing a book. Also, seek out community advice and perspective. Again, for the folks who are part of StoryPlan, I think when we're struggling with something that's hard, we feel like there's something wrong with us. We're like, this is supposed to be easy, right? But the thing is, if you're talking to other writers, if you're in a group with other writers, you can say, hey, this is hard, eh? And they can say, yeah, it is hard. I found this part difficult. You can say, oh, I found that part difficult. And you can realize there's nothing wrong with you. A quote I love was said to me once by a business coach. I was learning how to build a business, and I was taking some business course or a webinar like this or something. And what he said to me was, welcome to the hard part, Kevin. By the way, it's all the hard part. Life is hard. It's hard. And so getting that perspective and saying there isn't anything wrong with you, this is just a hard thing, can be really, really useful. Okay. So on this presentation, we have talked about the 3 biggest challenges that I see writers running into time and time again. And so that's distractions. We talked about that. That's the micro level skill set gap. None of us are ever taught how to write a book. And then there's that emotional roller coaster ride. This is the reality. Writing is an emotional art form. We are tapping into our own emotional experience, and we are trying to evoke emotions in the reader. And that's draining. That's emotionally draining. And again, the emotional roller coaster ride doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It's just the process of creating art and of being a writer. And so what we want to do is try to smooth it out a bit so that we know those hard times are coming and they don't feel quite so bad. The roller coaster ride is more of a path than it is a roller coaster. So what are the secret keys to a first draft success, right? That was the promise of this webinar. What are the things we need to do to succeed? Well, we need proper project management. We need to treat the book like the big project that it is. We need accountability. We need someone keeping us on track and holding us to deadlines. We need training resources. We need to go to libraries. We need to watch webinars like this one. We need to do the research necessary to become masters of the craft that we've chosen to work in. We need that Hemingway mindset, that idea of continually learning, of every week learning something a little bit more, a little newer, a different perspective on how to write and how to achieve the effects in the reader that we want to achieve. We also need ongoing emotional support. Like I said, this is an emotional art form, and most artists are emotional people. And that's so valuable for your art. But you're not creating art when you're down on yourself. You're not creating art when you're depressed. And so you need to ensure the emotional supports are in place to help you through the project. And I think one of those things is consistent positive feedback. Like I said, this actually comes from an experience I had with my wife. I thought about what I really wanted when I gave my manuscript to my wife to read. And I realized all I wanted was for her to be proud of me and to tell me that it's good. And so we developed a system where I give her my raw manuscripts, she goes through them and she check marks the parts that she likes. Then we sit down and we go through it. She goes, I really like this part. Oh, your writing here is beautiful. Oh, this was such a great surprise. Oh, this part was really scary. And she just tells me what she liked, because I'm not looking for a critique. I'm not looking for someone to tell me what's wrong with the manuscript. I know there's things wrong with it. It's a work in progress. What I need is someone to tell me it's worth it. And so that's what I've developed with my wife. And I hope you can seek out someone in your life who can provide that kind of positive and consistent feedback throughout the process. Then there's that community perspective, that idea of thinking you're a weirdo, thinking you suck, thinking what you're going through is singular to you, that there's something wrong with you and that it's supposed to be easier than it is. You know, getting that perspective of being around other people who say, yeah, this part is hard, but they'll also point out, wow, you're really good at that part. I struggle at that. I struggle at describing characters' physical features. You're amazing at that. Oh, well, I'm good at describing features, but I'm not as good at plotting. Oh, plotting is easy for me. And we realize we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses. And this is just a tough thing. And that comes from perspective. That comes from touching base with other writers going through the same thing. And expert feedback, talking to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. I think writers going to these critique groups, it's beneficial. You're sharing your work. Sharing your work is always good. You're learning to critically listen to other writers' work and provide them with feedback. But it's kind of like a bunch of amateur hockey players getting together and then just like sharing power play tips. Like, wouldn't it be better to get an NHL coach in there to say, here's how we actually set up a power play, instead of a bunch of amateurs giving each other advice? There's benefits and drawbacks to critique groups, but I really think that if you want honest, positive feedback, you should be reaching out to an expert to get that. And I think if you could pull these things together, writing the first draft of a book becomes a heck of a lot easier. But of course, it's a lot of work, like we talked about at the beginning. You know, seeking out these resources, creating accountability, trying to find positive people to give you feedback, trying to get that emotional support, finding the right expert to read your stuff and give you thoughts and comments and all of that. So none of this is easy. It's a big project. It's a lot for you to do, but you can do it. But let me ask you a question. If I told you that I've developed a program that provides you with easy and instant access to all of the keys to first draft success that we've been talking about today, would you be interested in hearing more about that? Let me know in the chat. Daniel, I know you're interested because this is like, you've been on this webinar before. I know it. You must like it enough to rejoin, right? Okay. Ross is saying yes. Len is saying yes. James. All right. Perfect. All right. All right. I got positive feedback. See, that's what I was looking for, folks. That's what I'm talking about. Now I feel good. Now I feel ready to go forward. If it involves us using Facebook, no. Guess what, John? It does not. Facebook is not involved whatsoever. I would like to introduce you to my first draft group coaching and community. The outcome of first draft is simple. Finish a first draft of your manuscript in 6 months or less that reads like a third draft and that was actually fun to create. This is the model, all right? This is how we go from not getting a first draft written to getting a first draft written. We go from distracted focus to focused progress. We go from skill set gap to skill set development. We go from that emotional roller coaster ride that we talked about to fun and friendship and community. Okay, so we're going to address distracted focus like this. We're going to stop you from worrying about the wrong things during the drafting process and instead get you focusing on the actions and strategies that lead to drafting momentum and writing productivity. First, we'll establish project milestones, reasonable timelines, and word count tracking systems. Next, we'll establish a private writer community that will hold each other accountable throughout the drafting process, not on Facebook. Then we'll use ongoing coaching and group learning to keep you laser focused on what really matters during the first draft of your book. So that rather than going off track or hitting blocks, being sucked into that revisions maelstrom, or getting distracted from your manuscript, you will make steady and continuous progress towards the completion of your first draft. So how do we ensure focused progress? With project tracking, with accountability, and with coaching. Now let's talk about that micro level skill set gap. We'll combat this so that you're continually developing your writer's craft skills while simultaneously making massive progress on your manuscript. I am a huge believer in dual paths. We don't do all the learning and then write. We are constantly making forward progress on our manuscript while learning. Dual paths. First, we'll build up your writer's craft skill set with 20 training courses, online courses focused on drafting techniques, productivity strategies, and the micro level writer's craft fundamentals. Then we'll have a weekly hot seat session where I'll review pages submitted by members in the group and then walk everyone through what's working in the scene and where it can be improved. Finally, we'll continue to use our private group forum, not on Facebook, to share and recommend resources such as videos, books, templates, including the items I'll share from my vast personal collection of writer's craft resources. I went out and found all the books and all the tools and went through them so that you don't have to. And so we'll be able to support your growth in your continuing education as an author. How do we address the skill set development? With training, with the courses, with hot seat sessions, and with our resource library. How are we going to address the emotional roller coaster ride? Well, writing a first draft isn't easy, like we've talked about throughout this presentation, but just because it isn't easy doesn't mean it can't be fun. So we'll take that emotional roller coaster ride and turn it into an emotionally joyful and intellectually stimulating experience. First, you're going to receive ongoing feedback from me throughout the drafting process regarding where and how you can improve your scene-by-scene writing via weekly group question and answer office hours calls. Next, each week you'll be matched with a new positivity partner who will read your pages and provide you with only positive feedback, not a critique partner, a positivity partner. Finally, by drafting the book as part of a group program, you'll be able to benefit from the support and community atmosphere that can only be found amongst other artists going through the exact same process and encountering the exact same challenges as you. And as a result, you'll be able to write an incredible first draft without getting distracted by the challenges life throws your way. You'll be able to fill your writer's craft skill set gap while making progress on your manuscript. You'll write an incredible first draft without going on an emotional roller coaster ride. Listen, we all have ups and downs while drafting a book, but the first draft program will ensure that when you reach a low point, you'll have a community of like-minded authors and an experienced writing coach to pull you through the self-doubt and get you back on top of your writing game. All right, so on that fun and friendship side of things, we've got a positivity partner each and every week, reading your material, giving you positive feedback. You're getting feedback from me on these hot seat sessions and Q&A calls. And we've got the community spirit, cheering for each other and pulling each other on. So, writing a book does not have to be nearly as hard as people make it. First draft is not about all-nighters. It is not about a mad scramble to complete a first draft. It is not about a National Novel Writing Month approach. First draft is a reasonably paced program that will keep you on course to achieving your goals without leaving you feeling stressed or pressured. We've got enough of that in life already. After working with writers for a decade, I can assure you that 6 months is a reasonable timeline to get done the work you need to get done while also taking care of your family, completing your day job, and participating in all the other activities that life throws your way. Of course, if you're halfway through a manuscript, you probably don't need 6 months. Some people need a little bit more than 6 months, but this is a reasonable time frame that I think most writers can easily get their first draft written in. So here's exactly how the program works. Each Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we meet for a question and answer office hours call where you're able to ask me, as well as the other people on the call, any questions you want about the writing process and your book in particular. Then we'll meet again for a hot seat session on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. That's why this webinar was at 9 o'clock, by the way, folks, because I had a hot seat call at 7 p.m. tonight, Thursday nights. In these sessions, I go over the pages submitted by a member in the program and break down in detail what's working, as well as where and how it can be improved. Feature of the night. I'm not sure what that means, John. But this is the hot seat is the exact same thing I do with my one-on-one clients, right? We sit down, we go over the scenes in detail. I'm now charging $1,000 a month for one-on-one. If anyone wants to work with me one-on-one, we'll set up a call and we can talk about that. But via this program, you get that same experience at a fraction of the cost because you're part of a group. Now, this was the thing. Where is the group? It's not in Facebook. It's a Slack group. So Slack is a program management chat tool for groups, but it's completely separate from social media. So via Slack, you'll be able to continue to interact with the other program participants in our private online community, where you can communicate with each other and with me throughout the week. Anytime you have a question, anytime you want to share a resource, okay, John's familiar with Slack. Awesome. So that's where we interact between our coaching calls. In addition, we'll get you instant access to the First Draft Training Library, which features 20 mini courses covering productivity techniques, approaches to scene structure, methods for developing opening pages that agents love, how to write an unforgettable ending, and much, much more. We got 20 courses in there. Plus, each week you'll be matched with that new positivity partner, and you and your partner will exchange one scene of about 2,000 words in length, and you'll give each other only positive feedback. Now, listen, I know you. Most of you here live, I've interacted with before. And those of you who I have not interacted with, I've worked with enough writers to know you. You want to improve your skill set so that writing a book is a faster and easier process. You want to escape a mundane existence and live the writer's life full of freedom, fun, and focused creativity. You want to publish a book because there's something inside of you that you want to share with the world, or a contribution you want to make to society. You want to be surrounded by creatives who follow their passions, who lift each other up and help each other achieve their artistic goals. You want to prove to the world, to your friends, to your colleagues, to your family, that you're capable of writing an incredible book. And you also want to prove that to yourself. So this is your chance. I invite you to join First Draft so that 6 months from now, you'll be holding a completed first draft in your hands, and you'll be able to look back today, to September 28th, to this moment and say, that's when I took the leap. That's when I chose to believe in myself and what I'm capable of as a writer. So when you join First Draft, you get weekly question and answer office hours calls so that you can ask questions specific to your project and situation, a $275 value. You get the weekly hot seat office hours calls so that you can get one-on-one coaching and editorial advice at a fraction of the regular cost, a $275 value. You get access to our private Slack group so that you can participate with a community of writers without the distractions of social media. I hate Facebook and social media as much as anyone. You also get access to 20 Writers Craft courses so that you can continue to add to your Writers Craft skill set. Now, Laura, I did see your question about the courses. So this is how the courses work. You get instant access to all 20 courses right away. You can go over all 20 right away if you want, but it's a lot of material. It's hours and hours of training. So what I do is every Monday in the program, I recommend one course. And then people who want to take it at that pace watch that course. And then in our questions channel within Slack, they ask questions or we discuss it on the Q&A call that week. So there's a group component in terms of every week we tackle a different course, a different topic. That said, the courses don't build on each other the way StoryPlan does. If you've been in StoryPlan, week 2 builds on week 1, right? It's a 4-week program that builds on itself. The courses inside First Draft are courses that are there for when you need them. So for example, we have a course on the midpoint shift, right? That moment right in the middle of your story where everything shifts. And so that doesn't necessarily build on the opening pages course, though it kind of does, right? Because we write our opening pages, then we write our midpoint shift. But the idea is go to these tools when you need them. Otherwise, we'll attack them on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis as a group. Let me know if that makes sense to you, Laura. So when you join, you also get that weekly positivity partner so that you get constant positive feedback throughout the drafting process. And I honestly think this is priceless. Knowing every single week that someone will read your material and tell you that they like it is I don't want to say life-changing, but it's art changing. It's really, really powerful stuff, surprisingly powerful stuff. So when we add all that up, First Draft is $1,836 a month when you join today. But obviously, that's a crazy price. We're going to do it at $350 a month. Or if you want to join for 6 months, if you want to do the 6-month membership, it is $1,400 for a 6-month membership in the program. I've just turned on an offer over in the chat. You can click that and it's got the links to where you can choose either the month-to-month payments or the 6-month membership. But of course, I've got bonuses for you, right? I want this offer to be amazing for you. So let's talk about bonuses. For the 20 courses, we are also going to have 20 Writers Craft sketch notes so that you can easily revisit the First Draft course content at any time. So say you took the pacing course 2 months ago, you want to refresh yourself on that course. You come over here, you pull out the sketch note, and you really quickly, with a colorful, fun, singular document, get caught up on all the material covered in that course. People learn in different ways. And so I want to ensure that in addition to the videos, we also have the sketch notes for folks to learn that material and revisit it. We're also in the progress of developing transcripts for all 20 courses so that you can read along or you can underline or you can take notes on all of the course content. Again, I know this is coming out of writers already in the program saying they want this. They're creating these sorts of transcripts themselves. So we are now creating them every week as the courses are being recommended. I'm putting together the transcripts as well. So you're going to have those 20 transcripts for all of the courses. I'm also going to give you my book that I mentioned at the beginning of the course, The Novel Writer's Blueprint. This book will teach you how to write your first book using an easy to follow 5-step system that stimulates idea creation, simplifies workflow, and supercharges your writing. This book will help you turn your literary dreams into reality. I also have an online course based on the material in my book, Smash Fear and Write Like a Pro. Now, this is for that mindset side. This is for the folks who are like, I don't know if I'm capable of this. I don't know if I'm good enough. If you've ever worried that your writing isn't good enough, if fear of criticism or rejection has kept you from publishing your work, if you find yourself endlessly redrafting for fear of releasing a less than perfect final product, if you feel anxious or nervous when it's time to tackle a difficult chapter or begin a new writing project, this course is for you. This course is going to teach you how to harness fear and move beyond the trepidation that's been holding you back from achieving your literary goals. That's bonus number 4. Bonus number 5 is for those of you who aren't sure you have the time to write or to participate in the program. We are going to do a live private training workshop where we'll cover the methods and tools you need to find the time in your busy schedule to get your writing done. We'll look at how to use time management techniques to immediately skyrocket your daily word count. We'll look at the systems and templates that can allow you to carve out time for writing, even if your schedule is currently fully booked. And we'll look at the absolutely best productivity software and tools for writers. Bonus number 6 is a one-on-one coaching call with me. We'll schedule this one-on-one call and we'll go over we'll review and finalize your story plan. If you've been participating in story plan, we'll identify challenges and roadblocks unique to you that could get in your way. And we'll identify ahead of time the resources and the protocols that you're going to need to overcome those challenges. We'll also determine what supports you'll need to maintain focus and help you keep meeting your daily word count goals. Basically, the point of this one-on-one call is to do everything I can to help set you up for success in the First Draft program. Everybody wins when the writers in my program are a success. So I want to ensure we do everything possible to help you achieve your writing goals. So when you join First Draft today, you get weekly question and answer office hours calls. You get weekly hot seat office hours calls. You get membership in our private Slack community of passionate authors. You get access to the 20 Writers Craft courses. And you get bonus number 1, 20 Writers Craft sketch notes. You get bonus number 2, 20 Writers Craft transcripts. Bonus number 3, my book, The Novel Writer's Blueprint. Bonus number 4, the Smash Fear and Write Like a Pro online course. Bonus number 5, we're going to do a live training to help you find the time to write. And bonus number 6, a one-on-one coaching session with yours truly. So when we add up the value of all these bonuses along with the material already inside the program, we're looking at a $2,611 value and 99 cents. And you're getting all of that today for $350 a month. If you want to go month to month, or if you want to do the one-time payment, do that 6-month membership. That works out to being $233.33 or something a month. All right, $2,600 for $230 a month sounds pretty good to me. Now, for those of you wondering, we're talking about these 20 courses, right? What am I going to learn in the courses, in the training library? Well, you're going to learn how to set word count goals, establish project milestones, and track your progress. How to hone your understanding of writer's craft while writing your book, how to curate your workspace for productivity and creativity, how to capture ideas whenever you have them, how to set up your manuscript with industry standard formatting, how to stimulate and spark ideas, how to choose the best point of view for your book, 4 unique approaches to scene structure, the benefits of writing quickly and how to do it, how to use show and tell to control pacing and avoid info dumps, how to approach environment and setting as living characters, why dialogue matters, and how to perform what I call the Wolverine Barbie test. That's all the more relevant now that the Barbie movie is the biggest hit of the year. How to work conflict and tension into your dialogue, the different types of subplots, what they do and when to resolve them, the difference between repetition of wording, thematic patterning, and controlling idea, how to properly punctuate your manuscript, including using the 3 dashes. How many of you know how the difference between the M dash and the N dash? That's what you learn in that course. Learn how to craft a well-rounded villain, how to write opening pages that readers and agents love, how to ensure your book has an incredible midpoint shift. I think I mentioned that course. What the all is lost moment is and why your book needs one. The 3 types of endings and how to give the reader satisfying closure. 12 unique techniques for researching your book, the 4 external literary elements and the 4 internal literary elements and how to shuffle them, how to use half a dozen different software tools for authors, why art doesn't need to be benevolent, the 3 phases of revisions and exactly what to do at each step in the process that we just lightly touched on at the beginning of this presentation. 20 questions to ask yourself when revising a scene, and so much more. Hours and hours of training. So when you join First Draft, you get the question and answer calls, the hot seat calls, the access to the Slack community, 20 courses, the weekly positivity partner, 20 Writer's Craft sketch notes, 20 Writer's Craft transcripts, the Novel Writer's Blueprint, Smash Fear and Write Like a Pro online course, how to find the time to write live private training, and a one-on-one coaching call with me. $2,611 value when that doesn't even include the bonus value, and it's just $350 month to month. Take it 1 month at a time if you want, or join for the one-time payment of $1,400. If you're not sure if it's right for you, join for a month. Do the $350 month to month. There's no long-term commitment with that. If you don't like it, if it's not for you, no problem. You spend a month in the program, you got access to a ton of material, didn't work out. But what I find is most people who join at the monthly rate realize how much they love the program and how much it's helping them achieve their writing goals. And so they upgrade to the one-time payment at that time. Totally up to you. Lots of flexibility. Now, here's a super cool thing. This is not a new program. This is not a new thing I'm flinging out there. This is a successful program full of writers already up and running, and it's been running for coming up on 2 years now. So we had our initial session in January of 2022. And what that means is that our video archive, we record all of our office hours calls, all of the question and answer calls, all of the hot seat calls are recorded. So that means you're going to get access to over 90 question and answer office hours recordings and over 90 hot seat office hours recordings. That's bonus number 7. Access to every single call we've ever had in this program over the last 18 months. I think we've been up and running now. And what that means is even if you never even attend a single live office hours call, even if you never watch a single training video from the training library, even if you never check out a single sketch note or read a single transcript, you still get access to over 180 hours of coaching calls that you can watch at any time. You can watch one call a day for 180 days, and you're not going to run out of material because we're always doing new calls every week, 2 calls a week. And this bonus is easily worth $2,000. So between the Q&A calls, the hot seat calls, the Slack group, the training courses, the sketch notes, the transcripts, my book, my online course, how to find the time to write, live training, a one-on-one call with me, over 160 hours of coaching call recordings. That's 180 now. I upped it because I did this a couple months ago. We're now over 180 hours. We're looking at a total value of $4,600 for $350 a month, or a one-time payment of $1,400. Really incredible value that you folks are getting when you join First Draft. So I want you to ask yourself, if all joining First Draft did was provide you with accountability to support forward progress with your writing, Would it be worth it? If all it did was give you a better understanding of the writer's craft fundamentals absolutely necessary for commercial success, would it be worth it? If all it did was introduce you to a creative colleague who becomes a lifelong creative champion for you, would it be worth it? If all it did was provide you with a plan, milestones, and tracking techniques in support of the completion of the fun and focused first draft of your book, would it be worth it? What about if all it did was proved that you aren't just a mom or a dad, a grandpa or a grandma, a student or an employee, but an artist with something to contribute to the world? Would that be worth it? And if all it did was help you produce a book that goes on to change one person's life, would it be worth it? I believe that the answer is yes, and I hope that you do as well. Here's what folks in the program are saying. Sandy Day said, "First draft changed my life. It changed the way I write and how I approach my writing. I learned new habits through accountability to my fellow writers and new skills from Kevin's teaching and editing. The biggest bonus is how much fun it is on our weekly calls. I've made new friendships and at the same time completed a 60,000 word first draft in under 4 months. Highly recommend." Here's Phil Ray, the author of the Charles de la Four mystery series. When Phil came to work with me, he had not written a book before. He now has 3 novels out in less than 2 years. And he says working with Kevin and going through the first draft program was hugely beneficial. The materials, community, and accountability greatly accelerated my writing process. All right, so you've got 2 choices now. First option, do nothing, don't take the leap of faith. Just go back to regular life, hit the library, order a bunch of books from Writer's Digest, start doing everything on your own. Or make a small investment today, and small compared to the massive value you're going to get in return, and give First Draft a shot. When you join First Draft, you're getting every resource I could think of to support you and get you to where you want to go. I think it's really reasonably priced at $350 a month, or bringing that down to $233 a month if you make the one-time payment and join for 6 months. I'd love to work with you and help you get the first draft of your book written. So it's time to join First Draft. Let me know in the chat, folks. Do you have questions? Do you have questions about any of the material we went over in the program today or in the webinar today? I can't believe I wore this hat the whole time. It's ridiculous. Let me know if you have any questions about First Draft and how it works, or any of the material we covered today, the secrets to overcoming those 3 big challenges when writing the first draft of your book. Oh my God, I checked. Ross is still on. Ross, you are a trooper. 3 in the morning, an hour and 15-minute presentation, and you're still hanging in there. John, there is actually a final draft program. How it works is the folks who join First Draft and complete the 20 courses and complete the first draft in their group, they upgrade to Final Draft. Final Draft includes a bunch of additional tools, resources focused on the revision side of things. You get everything inside of First Draft and some additional calls and resources and things for the for the revisions process of your book. But right now I'm focused on First Draft. If you are in the revisions phase and you think Final Draft might be for you, it includes everything we've covered here, an extra hot seat call on Sunday nights, and some other bonuses and tools and things. Let me know, and I can get you the information about that program. What if you can't make Tuesday night calls? Oh, so if you can't make the calls, they're all recorded. So you can revisit them at any time. So one of our existing members is in Sweden. So it's even worse than Ross, who's it's 3 a.m. for Ross. It's like 5 a.m. for Jesper, who's part of the program. So he just watches all the training, the office hours calls via videos. They're there and you can watch them at your convenience. And something personally I like to do is I actually click that speed up button, and we you get to go through the material or the discussion a little bit quicker. You don't want to turn people's voices into chipmunks, but you definitely want to you can go through it a bit quicker. Laura was asking about writers I've worked with and their books. So those two writers that I had the testimonials from, I have them because they've been through the program and have published. And I always like to keep like client books around. So Carl Blackburn wrote The Children of Thomas Aquinas. And then is Daniel still on the call? Daniel Pease on the call wrote Careless. And my client, this is a nonfiction book, but my client Val Rios, she wrote this book, Chief Inspiration Officer, and this one has like, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it's something like 200 fives. Let me look it up. She's got like something like 200 5-star reviews on Amazon. What is it? Chief Inspiration Officer. 120. So she has 120 5-star reviews, or is that just the audiobook? No, that's all of it. Yeah, so 120 5-star reviews. And all of these folks I've done interviews with on my podcast. So except for Daniel. Daniel, we still got to do a podcast. I saw an interview with Daniel, and he was fantastic. We had one scheduled, and then I had some medical issues, but we should definitely reschedule now that I'm up and running, Daniel. But yeah, if you're curious about writers who have been through working with me, who have been through Story Plan, who have been through First Draft, who've gone on to succeed, there's interviews with Phil, there's interviews with Val, all those folks. I try to highlight them as much as I can. And Daniel, let's get you one of these. We'll get you a podcast interview hat. All right, folks, I know how late it is. I'll give it 30 seconds. I'll have one more sip of water here to see if there's any other questions. Otherwise, let's call it a night. Let me check if there's that questions channel. Nope, no one published in the question channel. All right. Thank you so much for spending your evening with me. I know it was a late one. I try to mix it up. I try to do early morning and night ones, but this one was certainly pretty late. So John asks, how much does genre matter? Right now I'm working on lit RPG story. We've got people in every genre, included nonfiction. Nonfiction, most of the training all of the training is focused on fiction, and some of it crosses over to nonfiction. But our nonfiction members who have participated are mostly there for the community and the coaching, whatnot. The additional training resources don't apply as much to nonfiction, but otherwise, we've got people in every genre. We've got contemporary women's fiction. We've got an erotica author right now. We've got mystery writers. There's always lots of mystery writers. We've got science fiction writers. We've got fantasy writers. We've had romance writers. Hey, James. So let me, I'll just post in the chat the link to the 6-month one. That's the link right there to the 6-month membership. I'm just trying to think of all the people in the program, what other types of stories we've got in there right now, or other genres. But the point is, personally, it's kind of funny. I write and I tend to watch in movies and television. I really like genre stuff like science fiction, fantasy, and action, and horror and thriller. That's the stuff that I write and that I tend to view. However, in my reading, probably my English literature background, I really love the modernists. So a lot of Virginia Woolf, a lot of Ernest Hemingway, a lot of F. Scott Fitzgerald. I mean, really the classics of literature. I read The Grapes of Wrath for the first time a couple years ago, and it blew my mind. So genre does not matter because well, one, I love trashy, pulpy genre, and two, I love classic literature and everything. And we've got people from all genres in the program. And the reason why it works is that I just actually did a podcast this week inspired by Daniel, who's on the call. Daniel sent me a video of a drummer and challenged me to do a lesson based on watching this drummer perform. And the very first lesson I took from it was that mastery crosses genres. So this drummer was clearly a rock drummer, and he was absolutely killing it on a 90s pop dance song. And I was like, why? Well, it was because the fundamentals cross genres. Regardless of whether you're writing a historical romance or a dystopian post-punk industrial horror, you still need structure. You still need character arcs. You still need thematic unity. You still need good pacing. You still need key milestones like that all is lost moment. We still need an incredible opening and a really solid closing. We still need subplots. We probably want a romance in there. Like, that's the thing about romance. It is the one subplot that works with every other genre. And so, yeah, genre does not matter. And then, Laura, how many people max are in the cohort? Do you mean how many people am I welcoming right in this week? Or do you mean how many people are in the group as a whole? But generally, at any given time for the last 2 years, we have about 20 people in the program. Folks come and go as they finish their book and they graduate to final draft and whatnot. But generally, we're hovering around 20 people. And then on any given office hours calls, yeah, group as a whole, yeah, so about 20 people. And on any given office hours calls, it's probably 5 less than that because, like I said, some people are in Europe, some people are watching the replays, someone's sick, someone else had to take their kid to soccer or whatever. So the calls are probably more like 10 people most of the time. And in the group, something like 20 people around that. Like that's why you notice this is a $350 program. It's incredible value for $350, but like there's way cheaper programs out there. And that's because they have way higher numbers. I prefer to work closely with people. I want to work with a small group of writers intimately so I know them and I know they work and I know how they respond. And so, yeah, I could easily get 100 people in this program by selling it for $100, but I don't want to work with 100 people. I want to work with 20 amazing people. Yep. So, Laura, how it works with the cohort is that's when we cycle over the 20 training courses. So right now I'm welcoming in a new cohort. We're going to get started on Monday. So we're going to close the doors on this whole cohort on Sunday. And starting Monday, we'll be going through, I'll be recommending a different training course starting at 1 and going through 20 for the 20 weeks. But some people join midway, or some people aren't done their book in 6 months. They want to take longer, and so they hang around. And the people in final draft, so the people who graduate from first draft, they finish writing their first book and they graduate to final draft, they're still part of the first draft community. And so that's why like even if we only bring in 5 people this week, right, we still have 20-ish people in the program because there's the people already in it, the people who joined halfway through, and the folks from final draft also participate. So yeah, you would be the October 1st cohort. We're going to get started next week. So the folks who are part of Story Plan right now, we have one more Story Plan coaching call next Wednesday, but guess what? First draft is Tuesday and Thursday. So for folks who are in Story Plan coaching right now, when you join first draft, we can have 3 calls next week if you want. Or I will be hosting 3 calls. It's your choice to attend them or not. To the book I'm recommended at the start of the call. What book did I recommend, Ross? I don't remember. I recommend a lot of books. Was it a writer's craft book or was it just a novel I'm reading or something? I don't remember. The novel oh, the novel writer's blueprint? My book? Yeah, it's just on Amazon. Go to Amazon. Yeah, just go to Amazon, hit um look it up. But you get it for free when you join First Draft. So don't buy it. Don't go and buy it on Amazon. I'll give it to you here as a bonus. In fact, you know what? I'll give it to all of you. Everyone who's still on the call. So Daniel, James, John, Laura, Ross, Tom, all of you, I'll just send you a copy of the ebook as a thank you for hanging out with me at 10:25 at night. I appreciate you guys being here. And so I'll send all of you that book for free for sure. There's a workbook that goes with it as well. If I can find the workbook, I'll get that to you as well. Laura, it's me and a bunch of dudes. Oh yeah, that's so funny. That's so interesting because usually in my programs, the women way there's way more women than men. I've been doing this for a decade, and even as a male coach, um, it's probably 75%. My clients are 75% women and 25% men. So Laura, the fact that you're the only woman on the webinar right now is fascinating. I know. So normally it's the men who are in the minority. Yeah, James, no problem. I'll certainly email the we do the ads. I'll certainly email you, James, the link for sure, for sure. And if you're having troubles, just let me know. We can PayPal it or whatnot for sure. There's not just Daniel. There's not just hats. There's helmets. All right. How's that? It's getting late in the webinar when I'm pulling out the Star Wars props. All right, everyone, let's call it a night. Where's the lightsaber? It is right here. This is Luke Skywalker's. Well, this isn't actually the New Hope setup. This is actually the Force Awakens setup. You'll notice we call this the glass eye, and in the Force Awakens it was kind of gold along the edge, whereas in the original trilogy it was not gold. But it does have the rivets. So these rivets were not in A New Hope. They were added during Empire Strikes Back because these grips were peeling off when they were shooting in the cold. And so everything after Empire has these little, oh God, what am I doing? I could go on about lightsabers forever. Things are going off track now. I do keep it within reach, and yes, I am a nerd for sure. Um, Honestly, in all seriousness, I keep it there for inspiration. I think what George Lucas created is mind blowing. This one man sat down and invented a story that has crossed cultures and decades and has inspired so many artists. And me as a child, I was someone I think it's funny. I hear about like religious people and they're like, what would Jesus do? um I grew up in Canada, not very religious, but like I remember being like, what would Luke Skywalker do? Like, I want to be a good person. I want to be a hero like Luke Skywalker. And so, anyway, I keep that lightsaber there as a bit of a creative inspiration in terms of like looking what George Lucas was able to accomplish, but also kind of a reminder, like to try to be a hero, to try to be a good person who stands up for people and supports them and fights evil and all of those things. Create something that lasts. Exactly. That is what it's all about. Oh wow, John Cena props in person. I'm assuming that's amazing. That's fantastic. All right, folks, let's call it a night. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for your participation. And I hope to keep working with you folks in the coming weeks and months. Have a great evening.